Hello, welcome to a special edition of Watermark's Church Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Tarno, joined as always by my co-host, John McGee. And John, he's finally here.
He is here.
We got him. We tracked him down.
I've not seen him live in a couple days. So, Todd, thanks for being here, brother.
It is awesome to be here. Yeah. And hello to our friends that are jumping in live and folks that are listening later. We're glad to be with you.
Yeah. So we're going to do some Q&A here in a bit. But first, Todd, the question.
Well, let me do this. Let me just tell them how they can submit their questions. You want to do that real quick?
That'd probably be helpful.
That way we'll get it all out there. So if you do have questions, you can make your way over to watermarkresources.org/CLP Live. You can submit questions there. Go over to the Watermark Resources Facebook page or YouTube. If you're watching there, just leave comments on the live stream, and that is a way that we can. I think we'll have some stuff there on the lower thirds of the screen as well for those of you that are watching live for ways to submit questions. So
love it. Todd, so we've been solving problems, taking care of like the next wise thing in front of us. But conversation Adam and I haven't had with you is like, brother, what's it been like to be you? Well, what's in your head? What's in your heart as a leader of this congregation?
Well, what it's been like to be me is, first of all, I'm just like everybody who's trying to love family. And to quote my good friend John McGee, who last night was on Watermark TV,
yes,
be empathetic, draw a circle around myself, and not stop dating my wife.
Amen.
Amen. And so, obviously devoting deeply to the Lord. One of the things I've loved about this is it crashed all of us out of the illusion that we're ever in control.
Yes.
Right? Everybody's right now like scrambling, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. That's a really healthy place to be all the time.
Yes.
We say around here a little phrase. I don't know who said it first. I don't think it was indigenous I know it wasn't to me. I don't think to any of us here. But that if dependence is the goal, then weakness is an advantage. To make it unique to me, I've said desperation is an advantage. And I love the fact that so many of us are feeling desperate right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's causing us to be as mindful and thoughtful as we should always be. So I do confess, that I love these moments.
Yeah.
This feels a little bit more like, I think you guys have heard me say before, I'd rather be up against, the Red Sea with nowhere to go with the most powerful nation on earth storming down on me than I would be sitting on my king's castle in the spring, checking out who might be refreshing themselves in a bath.
Right.
Because that one will get me in trouble. And this feels a little bit more like a Red Sea moment.
Yeah.
And so I love this. Yeah. I don't like the heartache it is to people.
Right.
I don't like the concern of people whose friends are really sick. I shared with you guys, I've got a friend who's very, very sick. He's got pneumonia. He's about my age. Mm-hmm. And by the grace of God, we found it today. It's not corona, but it's still pneumonia. Right? I think and so this has been happening all the time. Let us be reminded, folks get sick all the time. But I do love that we're having to adjust, be on the fly. And I am doing better than most because I've got guys like John McGee and Adam Tarno on my team. And I really mean that, guys. You've been amazing.
It's been it's brought out the best in our staff. I think I've been really encouraged with Watermark TV, but even Todd, your suggestion to call every single person in the congregation, and everybody just went into pastoral mode. And some of the conversations that I was, that were laid to me, I was like, that was so wise. That was so loving. And I was just really, really encouraged by our folks. One point I wanted to jump in here and just make.
Can we do this, though?
Please.
I want to just stop and let everybody know this has been incredibly encouraging. Right?
Yeah.
I was last night dating my wife on a walk with my wife.
Boy.
And as I stopped by homes, or as people, I texted folks I knew as I walked by. A lot of folks who didn't even go to Watermark. Hey, we're in front of your house, praying for you. Anything we can do, let us know. And just as I walked through neighborhoods, and I walked by a number of people who were members of Watermark, and I got texts back from them. You wouldn't believe the call I got today. So encouraging. And then I've gotten more emails, frankly, from my staff than I have members of our body saying, Todd, this has been incredible.
Yeah. Our
body is doing what we have prayed they would do in moments like this.
Yes.
And my favorite one, have you guys shared this? I got an email yesterday from Carrie about a conversation she had. The reason I would encourage you to do this is not just so that you can be as pastoral as you should be, but we did it, frankly, it was a test. It was our way of just saying, hey, is our body caring for each other in the smaller communities the way that we think they are? And I'm going to find it. Let's come back. I'll interrupt you a little bit later and read it because it'll take me a second to search for the email.
Let me make this point to those leaders who are listening in. Okay, so Todd is going, I love this. I was made for moments like this. Like General Schwarzkopf, I've men, listen to me, and I've got the clarion path for it. Okay, some of us are wired that way. and we should lead like that. And I was talking to a pastor friend. He said, what's been really interesting is how so many of our friends are leading really well, but doing so uniquely in a way that's kind of congruent with who they are and their wiring. And he goes, some are leading like generals, some are leading like CEOs, some are leading like pastors and just deep shepherds. Some have kind of an intellectual bent and a historical bent to them. And he said, they're all doing great, and they're doing it in their own unique way.
That's
and
good.
so Todd, I mean, we're here because we love the way you lead, but it's not the only way. And so through this, I wanted to encourage leaders, lean into your own unique wiring, fulfill your ministry, and through this moment, learn from others, but don't try to mimic or be someone else. I think your best value that you can add is just being true to the way that God gave you.
I like that. That's really
those
well
gifts.
said.
Yeah,
That's well said, John. John, let me ask you a couple of questions that have come in while Todd's looking for that email here real quick. Let me ask you about this. So one of the questions that's coming in about Re-engage and some of our ministries that meet during the week and have, do small groups during the week. They're asking, have we seen any couples over the last 10 to 12 days drop out because they don't like this virtual setup? Have you heard about any of that?
So I can't speak to the hard data. I can just give you the anecdotes. And anecdotally, the groups are doing really well.
Yeah.
And the leaders have, before we could even give out instructions, most of our leaders had already touched base and were putting together plans. And so I've gotten lots and lots of really encouraging stories of rather than dropping out, them coming closer together. So I'm sure there's people.
That's been what I hear too.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Did you find? Your
yeah.
email?
This was just the email. And so one of the things we're doing, we're calling people again, is we're just saying, hey, we know that you are connected to other members of our body. We're a kingdom of priests. We say all the time, right? One church, 4 locations, 4 campuses, thousands of locations. Yeah. And we're almost calling every individual member, well, not almost, we're calling every individual member of every location. And we're just saying, how's your location doing? And it's a way just to self-test our work and then to love them. But this was one that Carrie got yesterday. She said, I just got off the calls with a girl who struggles with mental health. She's currently involved in one of the ministries you were just asking him about. Yeah. And she said, when I came to Watermark, I want you to know, I quit surviving and I started living. Mm-hmm. And she said, last night I met socially, with folks online, with my particular group virtually. I was refreshed. It reset my thinking. Thank you. This is why I love this church. Right. And I would just say, this is why I love being a part of a body. One of the things that we are seeing right now is a little bit what you see. Well, what you would have seen, I think, had we been alive in the days of Noah. We've been talking to people about the importance of membership for a long time. Yes. And all of a sudden, people go, oh, my goodness, I wish I'd have been on that boat before the rain started falling, right? Yeah. Because we are caring differently for our members than we are the broader community. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit today, what we're doing with our members and what we're doing for the broader community. But we are called by Scripture to do good to all men, but especially to the household of faith. Yep. And so it just matters. I had one guy who, this guy is a renowned, very successful businessman, but he just said to me yesterday, as I was walking by his house and texted him, he just said, man, it just felt so good. Even though I was on a call with my community and the ministry I lead last night, just to know that I really am a member, right? Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons I would tell you, Pastor, to take advantage of this moment, is that I tell people all the time, accountability can kind of get this negative, burdensome, legalistic, vibe or thing assigned to it. But I tell people, this is the phrase I use all the time, so if this is helpful to you, use it. It's just like the reason that you're held accountable is because you count. You matter. Jesus uses the same logic in the Scripture when he says, hey, I know exactly how many hairs are on your head. I'm accounting for every hair in your head because that's how much you matter to me. Yep. So what an opportunity during this season to let folks know how much they matter.
Love it.
That's really
Todd,
good.
let's go. Let's just stay with this conversation for a second because play this forward. You've seen some of the estimates. Like 20% of America is going to be unemployed. So let's just cut that in half. Let's say just 10% of our body has someone who is going to become unemployed. That's going to change some things for some families, and they are going to call our church. And so, do you want to talk about just kind of our CARES process and what really has been in place, and how we're going to handle that, given what we think is going to happen?
Okay, so one of the things that we did, CARES, CHARIS, CARES, the Greek word for grace or gift. we have always had what we call a Caris account. And for years, we've been saying that if you're a member of this body, as long as we are able, you will never lack food, shelter, and clothing. Now, we didn't say that you'll get to have the exact same cable subscription that you've got. We didn't say that you have high-speed internet, but food, shelter, and clothing are going to come your way. And so even while there's social distancing, we're making sure that nobody is feeling deserted. So emotionally we're present, and then physically we have made plans to make sure that we're caring for everybody. One of the reasons we called every member is we know that because we encourage folks to be geographically near each other so you can be around each other more, and it's more, it's easier to be together relationally, is that there are pockets of zip codes that have probably more economic well-being than other pockets. So sometimes some of our locations are more at risk than other parts of our locations. Well, God's on top of that. That's why we're calling that location saying, hey, as you first try and meet the needs of one another, if you guys can't, let us know, because we got thousands of other locations that want to care for you. So we have a process, a Caris process it's pretty healthy. We've thought about it for a long time. When someone calls the church and asks for a physical need to be met, we don't go, oh, sure, no problem. What we do is we sit with them, and we've got to have the information. We get financially pretty naked with one another. This is my circumstance. This is how I got here. This is my provision, and this is what my need is. And sometimes we see people think, hey, I need to continue to make this car lease payment, and it probably isn't the kind of car they need to be leasing.
Right.
And so we address all those kind of things. But we make sure the food, shelter, and clothing are there. And let's just be honest, sometimes people don't want to share that information. And that's usually a tell that they're not really desperate.
That's exactly right.
Okay? And so when somebody comes to us, like if I go to a doctor and I say, Doc, I'd like some medicine. He goes, well, what's wrong? No blood work. Just give me the meds.
Yeah.
That usually means I'm not really sick. It's just I want something from those meds that I think is going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm hurting, I'm going to say, draw from me whatever you want. Put me through the CAT scan.
Right.
Figure it out and help me. And so, while we're not trying to embarrass anybody, what we're trying to say is we want to be good stewards and we want to help you. So let's take a good look, so that, first of all, if we got here because of a lack of wisdom, we can make sure we put things into place so that doesn't happen on a continual basis. And then also so that we can know that what we're doing is really helping you, and not to use the phrase we use around here a lot, it's not helping that hurts or enables.
Yeah. Now, for years, I got to, part of my job responsibility,
you led this.
I took all of those phone calls. And so when we say we get those phone calls, I mean, it's probably definitely at least 5 to 6 a week, and there's some people that are just going through the phone book and calling in, but we would always kind of have the same script. Makes it sound impersonal. I mean, we want to view all of those as opportunities that somebody that the Lord has brought us somebody to minister to.
There's a pattern.
And there's a pastoral moment, and we want to take them all very serious. And so we'd always get people I think just some of these particulars, I'm sure some people that are listening go, well, exactly how does that work? And so here's a basic rundown. The very first question, so we get the phone call, we take it. That's number one. And we answer it. How are you? We get to know them.
And I want you to comment on something, Adam. The people that are just calling random churches for help, how did you respond to those people first?
The exact same way we'd respond to everybody. You listen to them, you ask their name, and you listen for a little bit, and then we would always let them know. The very first question we'd ask them is, are you a member here? And so we're also probably pulling up the database to see if they're there.
Now we have a way to know that before they even tell us.
Yes. And so, are you a member here? No. And then we'd always let them know of just going, hey, listen, here's what the best thing we think we can do for you right now is relationships. That's the best thing, basically, is what we think we can do, is get you to a point in your life where you don't have to call another church at random asking for money. We've got relationships, so why don't you come join us? Come over here and get to know us and let us get to know some more of your situation. And that's how we would start some of those conversations, just letting them know we don't cut checks the same day when people, if they do ever call and ask.
So what do you do? And let's just role play. Let's say I'm that person calling, and I say, hey, Adam, that's all fine, or Pastor. Thank you for that. I mean, relationships are something I definitely want. But meanwhile, I'm going to lose my house. I've got 3 kids. I'm going to be out on the street. My landlord's already told me if I don't pay rent by noon tomorrow, I'm out.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that?
So we would ask them, we would pray for them, and then we would ask them, do you have any friends or family that can help you with that? And then we would just, as kindly and as graciously as we can, we would also tell them that we're not going to be able to help financially. but we would also give them lists of organizations that might be able to. And so we've got our list of other organizations here in the city that would be able to handle some of those and are equipped to take people same day and things like that. I would say, I don't know what the percentage is because you never know the details behind it, but most of the time people are just in a foxhole and bullets are flying. And as soon as you say no, their tone changes, they hang up on you.
Yep.
I mean,
They'll do one of two things. They'll either attack you, and that might be too pejorative a word, but they will either come aggressively at you, challenge you, tell you you're a fraud, ask you if you know the scriptures. Don't you know Matthew 25?
Yes.
Jesus says, if you care for the least of these, you'd care for me, and this is what I hate about the church. And they'll say something like, whoever's the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? They quote scripture at you sometimes.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
Or they crawl up into a fetal position and just give you the saddest story you've ever heard, to where if there's an ounce of compassion in you, you're going to try and figure out how you can mortgage your own home to help them.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so you've got to be prepared, and I'll say this: you've got to be prepared for addicts, because what I just described to you is what addicts do.
That's exactly right.
Addicts come at you, and they will either try and intimidate you with anger and with threats, because most people don't like that, and so they'll try and figure out a way to stop the aggression, or they will say, I've never met anybody so compassionate as you. I don't know if I've ever even heard of a church that loves the way that you love.
Right.
And they'll start to feed a narrative into you that's going to get you to respond, that's going to enable them to keep doing exactly what they want to do, and so that's what addicts do in almost every form of addiction, but it's also what people in crisis should do. So our job is to respond in wisdom and not be intimidated by threats, and to not be wooed by false praise and flattery. So when we one of the things I would encourage everybody to do, and Adam, we do this, and you already mentioned this, is we do support local ministries.
That's good.
So the church isn't. We thought about, do we create our own crisis housing here at Watermark? And we thought, we don't have to be the experts on everything, but there's going to be a need for that. So we want to support strategic partners. That means we vetted them. We know the right place to recommend people to, whether you're a battered wife, right, or a single mom who's about to be on the streets for her kids, right, or somebody who has no health care. Now, we got in that business. But, there's certain ones that we feel like there's partners that we can support. And so we genuinely do support these partners. We don't just push people to them. We've got to be a part of what they're doing, but they're set up to handle that crisis. And then in the midst of that, we do what you said. Hey, we would like to be involved with you in a relationship, so next time.
So you don't have to call a random person. Just come and join us. Come and hang out with us. Let us get to know you. And then most of the time, or for those that are members, then it was just that facts are your friends, and that and all of this. That's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get the facts, and we try to make it very, very clear in the beginning. This is not a fast-moving process. We do not cut checks the day of the request. Right. That just is not the way this is going to work. And so this is going to go slower than you want it to be, probably. It's going to be more thorough than you want it to be. But we think this is the best way we're going to love you in the midst of this, and that's what we're committed to. Is we're committed to loving you, and so
it's good.
The more time people can give us on these, and this is what's maybe going to be happening now. That as if the unemployment rate does go up, the sooner you can let your community group leader know, the sooner you can let us know that this may be coming. That's when we can start those conversations with the facts, so that we don't have to get to the point where you're like, I'm holding this eviction notice and it's tomorrow's the deadline.
And by the way, that is why, and one of the things that we do at Watermark is we encourage people to live authentically and to be known, right? Yes. Jesus talks, if you've been a pastor for 6 weeks, you've heard this stat, right? Jesus talks more about money than faith and prayer combined.
Yep.
So the fact that we go, hey, we're going to do life together, but we're not going to talk about money, means we're not really committed to doing life together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason Jesus did that, we know, and Adam, listen, just go to watermark.org and put in Adam Tarnow. A lot of times when we're speaking to our body, Adam's the one that we have addressed from a sermon perspective on this topic, because he's just so excellent at it.
And money.
But you're really great with your clarity on this. But what we tell folks all the time is, hey, you got to be sharing this information with one another so we don't have to get surprised, because there are people that within being well known and in the context of community, we do help the day of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So that fat gathering is number one.
Yep.
And then we always push them first to that smaller location, to
Yep.
their community. So
to
talk
their
about
community
that.
group. And so can your community group help? Can your family help? That's also a question that we'll ask if are your parents.
You're trying to gather all the resources
all
that
the
are,
resources.
that they have.
Who else can help here? And I would think that some large percentage of the Charis cases never even make it to the staff level because the local the small group takes care of it.
Absolutely.
In a
And-
way that the only reason, you know what, the only reason that grieves me?
Because you don't get to be
you
a
don't
part
get
of
the
that.
joy of helping.
I don't get the joy, not
Right.
only of helping, but of watching the Spirit of God do what the church is supposed to do.
And so go back and listen to our episode that we did on church discipline, where we said a large majority of the
Yes.
church discipline
Yes.
never even makes
Right,
it to the
right,
staff
right.
level because the community groups are doing what they're supposed to
Beautiful.
happen, and it happens the exact same way with the financial issues.
Okay,
And
Pastor,
so-
this is why this is so great. Listen to us. And smaller, we, just so you know, if you're listening out there in the great podcast unknown, we recommend our body listens to the Church Leaders Podcast.
Right.
Because we are equipping pastors all the time. And you've heard me say, lots of times that every week I kind of feel like I'm leading a pastor's conference when we're talking to the corporate body. But you want to help. Pastor, you're overwhelmed right now. Everybody's calling your phone. I would just tell you the first thing you need to do is ask your body for forgiveness that they need to call you first.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Watermark is, like I said, I mean, I am both a shepherd and an elder and staff person like you guys, but I'm also a member of the flock. And I want to be a part of a body, and I don't want a bunch of people who come and are attracted to the way that I do ministry. One of the things that the great coronavirus of 2020 is going to do is it's going to expose the attractional model for not being Jesus' church.
Yeah.
Right? So, Pastor, the first thing you should do is just start to, with your other elders, sit down and just say, hey, we've got to equip the saints for the work of service. It's almost like Jesus suggested that through his servant Paul in Ephesians 4, so that they can do this. So church discipline ought to primarily happen at that local level, and so should church care.
There we go.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a prediction about the church moving forward. First of all, I've been so encouraged by the church up until this point. Even the ones, Todd, I've even got some emails about, almost verbatim. We've been exposed a little bit, and man, we're not shepherding our people the way we should. And this has been a really good tell, and we're going to get after it. So I've gotten that email, and so even the ones who weren't fully set up, I feel like they're making shifts. But I think what's going to happen, we're talking about physical needs. I think the church is going to lean into that. So the food, shelter, clothing. I think the church is going to learn and innovate around there. I think job creation. I think the church has a real opportunity. I think this church has a real opportunity. There's some people here who've built things, and like tomorrow, if we put them in a room, I think they can create jobs, meaningful work for people who don't have work and don't have means to provide for their family. So not just cutting checks, but actually providing work and value and dignity. And I think that the church and even our church, I think in the next 6 months, I will bet you'll see some really encouraging things in the communities really around the world.
Well, I wish my friend Jeff Ward was here because he would tell you we've been doing that, right? There is that's exactly the way we've been challenging some of our business leaders in this church is to remind them that God's given them the power to create businesses and to make wealth so that others can be cared for. And what can we do for some of our other friends that are just now stepping into our body that maybe have a criminal background, but that we're going to disciple and vet, and that we're going to then say, hey, you can hire them. I know that you may not have a policy in your company to do that, but what if the church, in effect, after an appropriate amount of time, laid hands on people and could tell our business leaders, hey, this one, right, we're all human, so we're all prone to go crazy. But this one has shown himself faithful for 3 months, for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I would take a chance on him. I would hire him. So we have been discipling people in that way, restoring people in that way, and challenging our members to hire people. We have a ministry called Careers in Motion, which every Tuesday gathers. It helps people know what to do between jobs. It helps them network. It helps them work on resumes. It helps them learn to interview. And so we're discipling people for, and this is open to our community, by the way. But we're discipling people for being job impoverished, and we're also reminding those that are gainfully employed to look for opportunities to hire out of that particular pool.
Yeah, some
All
really
right, let's
beautiful
stay on
stories.
this topic of money because another question had come in just talking about us as an organization.
Yeah.
So, as Watermark, any financial decisions at this point that Watermark is making to try to manage the cash wisely, can you speak to that?
It's interesting. People that maybe don't know much about us, we have never passed a basket on Sunday morning.
That's right.
Okay, not one time in 20 years. And I at the same time, I've said, hey, we are maybe committing, if I'm guilty of pastoral malpractice in any area, it might be on not helping people realize that there's such joy in giving and providing for others. And so we do through membership process.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's been through the membership process understands why we don't pass a basket. And I would say once every, 12 weeks, we'll mention it on Sunday morning. Hey, this is why we don't do it, because we don't want our guests and folks that are coming in. I shared Christ with a guy today, and I talked to him about this as a point that we're not trying to get your money, man. We just want to love and serve your family. When you come, there won't be an offering. And I told him why, because people there just want to offer the grace of God to you. So there's a reason we don't do that.
Yeah.
But that being said, our body is trained to give. They don't need a basket in front of them to be prompted to advance kingdom work. And so that's another benefit to that kind of equipping and that kind of training. And so meanwhile, what you do want to look at, and I have heard from what we call our business administration team, our BAT team, those guys, we war game out for situations like this. When we're able, we try and have a certain runway of maybe 3 months of budgetary provision for our ministry when there's excess, before we start to look in ways that we can invest further, even outside our walls, in addition to what we're already doing as part of our budget. But yes, I would say that we are wargaming. We have made a decision, like for instance, some of our members that aren't full-time employed here, but that are part of our midweek training grounds, which is during the middle of the week. We can't have as many volunteers to care for kids during women's Bible study and things like that. We're paying those people through the end of April, even though we don't have any reason for them to come here. We're paying some of our security people and some of our cleaning people as an effort to care for them. And we're communicating with them 2 months out or 6 weeks out saying, hey, we don't know what'll happen May 1. From just this check coming, but we are still committed to you. So we're giving them lots of runway. We're not telling them we're not. We're telling them there's a charis process that will come into play. And then we're preparing our body. We're reminding our body during this season, in addition to normal ministry, there's going to be a 2 Corinthians 8 opportunity, which is to help those that are in a bit of a struggle financially. Because a lot of our members are part of what's called essential businesses. They're still working. But then there are a lot of our folks, anybody in the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry, those are flat shut down. And so we as a body are communicating with those groups. We're talking to our community group leaders. We're equipping them. And we're trying to find out when are folks going to run out of paychecks and how can we care for them in a way that would honor God and let them know that as long as they're part of this family, we're going to care for one another.
That's really good. Okay.
One of the phone calls I made to our members, he had just lost his job, and I said, "Okay, brother, do you have needs?" He goes, "Oh no, my group is all over it." He's like, I will not miss a meal. And he didn't blink. And I was really encouraged by that. So some of these things that we've talked about, there's some blog articles that we will link to. There's the whole charis process is there. We'll find some other resources.
Hey,
that we have.
Can we just finish that? Because we said there's 3 quick steps. Number 1, Adam, you care for them. We tell them this is going to be a slow, fact-gathering process.
That's right.
This is not a crisis ministry like Check Today. And then we just say, what does your community group know? Okay. And then the second step is everything your community group should already know, now you need to share with us. And in conjunction with your community group. And frankly, what we prefer is it's never the person in crisis that calls us. So let's just say that the 3 of us and our wives and 2 others are in community. The Wagner family is the one that has a need. I'm sharing that with you. And then what really should happen is one of you 2 should pick up the phone and say, this is what we've been doing with the Wagners. These are the facts. We believe that right now we're going to need some help outside of our smaller group. And so it would actually be one of you 2 that would be calling the larger church and the other locations.
That's right.
And not me.
That's right.
You wouldn't send me. You'd go, hey, we got you. And part of loving you right now is to make that phone call. And then as that happens, then what we do is based on that application and feedback from community group and community shepherds and others, we sit down with that person and that group That's the third step, and explain what we're going to do and why.
Yep. That's why.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
I think another particular in there, and the blog entry will have the best information, but what I remember from a few years ago when I did this, which I think is a good detail to keep in mind, is I think we try to stay away. We try to keep the financial provision if the church does cut a check to help in this situation. So it's gone through the whole process. The community group feels like they can't help. There's no family to help, and now we are going to help financially, to try to keep it to that food, shelter, clothing categories. And so the one that I think is interesting to note is we try not to pay for medical expenses for things like that, and we don't want to be the ones calling balls and strikes on what is a viable medical expense to pay and which one is not. And so sometimes what we'll do is we will maybe pick up the food or the shelter, like make the payments there to free up cash flow so that somebody could go pay a medical thing. So I know that is another just little nuance or detail in there sometimes.
Well, and the good news is in other words, what you're saying is you don't want somebody to say, I can't get medical care because the church isn't giving me the money.
Right.
And in our society, I mean, people talk a lot about, whether or not we should have universal single-payer health care. It already exists.
Right.
There's not a single person in our country. Now, you won't get the same kind of care, but there are emergency rooms and there are provision for people to go get medical help, which is why we have Watermark Urgent Care to take care of all the needs of any uninsured or under-resourced person for everything but surgeries and the like. And even that can be taken care of
through
as
that.
necessary through
That's right.
those other
right.
possibilities.
That's right. Okay. Let's talk about the future.
That's a fun topic.
We have no crystal ball. I mean, things change like literally by the minute, it feels like. But what's in your head as a leader of this congregation, like, the rest of this month, April, May, into June, like, or even beyond that, Todd? Like, what are you thinking about right now?
Well, listen, I do think a couple of things. That when you're addressing your people, just remember that your primary job is to help them seek God and be comforted by who God is today. And so I'm going to answer your question, but I remind you, you don't have to be a medical expert, okay?
Right.
You don't have to be a cultural commentator. You don't need to be a politician, okay? You have to be a minister of the gospel. And part of that, and one of the things I would encourage every pastor to pray, I know the elders and I, always, as a consistent course of our prayer, is, Lord, would you give us the insight that you gave Joseph? Right? You've done it before. You care for people. These are your sheep, not ours. If there are 7 years of famine coming, will you tell us? Would you show us what we should do today in the season of prosperity to prepare for such a time as this? We have taken principles. Because we have operated that way, which is not like we had this great insight. We had the same Bible you have. Okay? And that idea
I like that.
comes right out of the scripture.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, what I would just say is that's why we prayed this way. It's part of why we have 3 months provision. It's part of why we've communicated to our body about wanting to have a disaster relief fund. It's why we've wanted to have a Charis fund. And by the way, to other churches, I would just say, you might go, well, Todd, we've tried to do that. Our body's just not resourced to provide it. Then don't feel bad about that, okay? Because the broader community needs to be aware of your suffering in Jerusalem, even though they in their Macedonia might have, at this particular time, excess that they can care for you. So being a part of a larger network is also important. And having people who trust you when you call and know that you've been a wise pastor and equipped your body and communicated well with your body. And so now you're just saying, hey, this is what's happened. So, John, I think about how when tornadoes wiped out some folks in Moore, Oklahoma, that's where you're from, right? We knew what churches there weren't going to exploit this opportunity.
That's right.
When Katrina hit New Orleans, we knew what churches there weren't exploiting that opportunity, but we're going to see this as their greatest moment. Okay? And I hope if something happened that was devastating in Dallas, I mean, when the tornadoes came through and did $1 billion worth of damage a couple of blocks from here, I got calls from pastors in other parts of the country. Are you okay? Do y'all need anything?
That's amazing.
Because they knew that if there was a need, this is one of the places they wanted to work in and through. So that's why it's important to have some of those relationships with people outside of just your own little island. Right? We're part of a body. We're part of the universal body of Jesus Christ. And by the grace of God, as we do look ahead now, let's get very specific.
Yeah.
We're asking ourselves, we are reading, right? We're not cultural commentators. You know, people ask me, Todd, what would you do right now if you're president? I said, well, first of all, I'd have the best information. I'm a victim right now of what I can get from news conferences and cultural commentators.
All these experts that are out there now.
Right.
And honestly, they're doing the best they can. It's why we should pray for kings and those that are in authority.
Amen.
Because they're doing the best they can. Even with all the information, these are hard days. And I love it's driving our president to call for national prayer. How long has it been since one of our presidents did that? And a lot of the world mocked him, but let him mock him. Let the rest of us pray.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to figure out what we'll do. We're making some adjustments the first 2 weeks. Adam, when's your article going to be out that you just wrote about?
I don't know. We should text Caitlin and ask her.
Come on, Caitlin.
Soon.
It should be
Hopefully today or tomorrow.
soon.
But you know, one of the things we're already doing just now, coming up to week 3 of our weekend. So you guys know we started this thing called Watermark TV, both to do things at moments like this and then to archive. But we're going to adjust what we're doing on the weekends starting this weekend.
Yep.
Because we felt like the first couple of weeks, it was important to give a little bit of commentary and explanation for what's coming up, what we're going to do, how we thought about this, before we actually got into a message. And this weekend, we're not going to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're making adjustments. Adam's article is going to be really helpful for you for that. So look for that.
Yeah.
And it'll be coming soon on our Watermark resource
At least on
pages.
Watermark Resources.
Yeah, and I'll tweet it out as soon as it's available too. So
Yeah.
if you want to go to Words from Wags, it'll be there, and it'll be on the Watermark tweet as well.
There we
right?
go.
So we'll get it out. So just all that is to say is be thinking constantly and creatively, and then be welcoming feedback. Do the best you can, and then evaluate it.
Yeah,
and
right.
then imagine the 3 or 4 different scenarios. So first of all, each day has enough trouble of its own. Tomorrow will take care of itself. But leader, that doesn't mean you don't think about tomorrow.
That's right.
Okay? So you should go, hey, part of today's job is to plan for what might happen tomorrow. So you do look ahead, you war game out, you pray to God, and then you do the best you can as you move in each of those moments that become a reality.
Yeah.
Yep, it's good. One of the things I want to free leaders up is, there's no way to know the future, and some people will carry themselves as if they've got this whole thing figured out, all the way through the summer and the end of the year.
John, there is some way to know. It's prophecy. I did hear there was a prophecy conference that was recently canceled because of unforeseen circumstances.
You've got the microphone. You can.
That was such a good tweet. It was like there were so many prophecy conferences last year. Why did not one of them predict this?
It's like, could somebody help us?
Due to unforeseen
Ask
circumstances.
for your money back. Ask for your money back.
Listen, just take the next wise step.
There you
right?
go.
You don't have to. There's enough trouble right now. There's enough things. Now, think ahead. Get wise men. I love that. Hey, God, you've done this before. You've given human beings wisdom. We've seen it. Would you give us wisdom because we're trying to care for your people? And then you can just trust that whatever happens, God's going to be there as He always has been in the rearview mirror. You look back. It's one of the advantages of reading the Old Testament. It's like God has walked with some really stubborn, hard-hearted people. I'm trying not to be, and so I assume that since that's my posture, God's going to be with me as a leader going forward. So give yourself some grace. If someone goes, what are we going to be doing in September? Like, how can I possibly know? But I know today God's called us to faithfulness. I'm going to be your shepherd. I'm going to lean into this. I'm not going anywhere. And we can be concerned, but we don't have to be terrified.
That's
because
right.
God's good. That is, I think, some of the posture, and it's going to take care of itself one way or the other. And I think like the worst. I think this has also been helpful for me. What's the worst case, right? For some of these churches who have debt, well, they lose their building.
Yeah.
They lose their building. Okay, I mean, that would be. I think if we had to hand the keys off to someone out to this building, that would be a sad day.
It would, but you know what? We've wargamed for it.
But we're going to be okay.
We actually rehearsed that.
Right.
Yeah.
We are rehearsing losing our building.
That's right.
We did last fall. We told our body, don't come here this weekend because we didn't say the coronavirus, but we gave some other potential scenarios that would keep us from coming to this building.
Yeah.
And so many people in our body have just said that was so helpful.
Yeah.
Because we're getting now to live a little bit in that. So, yeah, John.
As the weeks go by, that is a great conversation for church leadership teams to have, to go, what are we going to do when we lose our building? Not if, when.
Right.
And just start to plan out of that and just go, is our body ready? Are they ready? And I think those are, because what we were kind of wargaming for was not a virus. We were thinking more of, the political landscape changes.
Yeah,
and
a governmental
churches,
decree of some kind, not related to a virus, but the virus of sin and rebellion against orthodoxy.
Yeah, and that they were going to shut us down. And then just going, okay, well, if it's no longer wise to even gather, what would we do, and is our body ready? And those were some good conversations for us to have that helped us get set up to be able to handle just this little season with some success.
It's good. Yeah, God's there. Even the worst case, you're going to be able to handle it. Even if several people in your congregation die, which would be terrible. But you've buried people before, and you've seen how God's used that. He will use this. Like, there's no scenario that God hasn't somehow in His sovereignty allowed, right? It's passed through His hands, and He has always sustained His people. He will do the same for you, and no matter how bad it gets. And we can have confidence in that. And you do not have to know exactly how this is going to play out.
And the empathy that it's creating and the sensitivity that it's creating just to sickness, back to what you said when we started this episode. And so we have our daily prayer, the Watermark prayer that comes out where people submit prayer requests and it goes out. The click and pray is what we call it. I'm noticing that I'm reading that with more intensity at the health things because I'm looking for the number 19. Right, I'm looking for the COVID-19 to see who's got it. Yeah. And I'm surprised at how few people, number one, how many prayer requests we have for people who are struggling with health ailments, how few people right now have submitted that have that number 19 in it. Yep. And it's just reminding me that this click and pray is filled every day with people that are struggling with physical ailments. And so I just think we're more attuned to some of that, which is great to have our eyes open back up to that, and just remember that and that's a bad day for anybody that's going through that. And so that's not a universal thing. In fact, many times that's even more isolating because you feel like you're maybe the only one who's struggling with that physical ailment, and everybody else is just out running around having fun. So, okay, let's just do a couple quick hits here with all of this. How did we go about calling all of our members? Did you split it up evenly? Yes, that's how we did it.
Well, actually, we went through our staff because, like, for instance, different ones of us have different responsibilities during this time. So what we did with our leaders is at our supervisory level, we went through and we kind of went a red, yellow, green. Like during these days, like our communications team, they were redlined.
Redlined.
All right. Some of our arts and IT team, redlined.
Yep.
Okay. And so we said we don't want to deny you the blessing of making some of these phone calls, but they were given a number in the teens to call.
Yeah, so anywhere between 12 and 52 is about what people had based on what we assumed their workload was. Yeah. So that was the way we distributed it out.
So funny story. I didn't put my own self. I didn't do a red, yellow, green for myself, and I got a ton of calls.
Oh, really?
It's like,
good for you.
Like John's not that busy, and I was really glad.
Yeah.
I was really
And then it was fun to watch the team help each other.
Yes.
Because we set an internal deadline because we wanted to take this serious and this was important. And so we set a deadline. And then we did some divvying up among the team.
And by the way, we're talking about almost 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And what I want to say to folks, two things. Number one, so when people, that eternal deadline, not eternal, but that deadline that we set, as folks got closest to it, I saw lots of emails going around, hey, I could use some help with these last 10.
Yep.
And I got it on it. Put me in, coach. It was
great.
It was so encouraging. But I want you to know, some people immediately started to say, we should do this again. And guess what? I love the comment I got from David Zena, who leads our community area. He goes, I think that would be detrimental to the health of our body. It was right that we did it this first time, but we would be invalidating the system we just checked on and are encouraged by and celebrating if we keep thinking our phone call is the phone call.
Amen.
And I just go, that brother beat me to the email. And so, amen. So we'll probably do it again, and I don't know, sometime in the future, but probably further than closer.
Yeah.
Because it's happening. I mean, it's been so great to just hear. And by the way, what we are going to do, though, is go back to folks who were struggling, who their location wasn't thriving.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to turn our attention.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's great.
For sure. Are you good to kind of wrap?
Yeah.
So
let's
Todd,
wrap it up.
just kind of last, I mean, if you had one more thing just to leave leaders with, kind of parting shots.
If I had one more thing, I think I would just go back and just remind them that part of what is going to happen now is people are going to look to them.
Yeah.
All right? And so it's so important that you as the caregiver take care of yourself. You are not the Messiah. Be getting some good rest. Be getting great time alone. Remember, Jesus was only here for 3 years. I would say those were pretty important hours and pretty important minutes. And if you read your Gospels,
It's good.
a lot of times they were looking for Jesus, okay? Because he was alone with the Father.
There we go.
So make sure, Pastor, you devote daily to Jesus Christ so that you are giving out of an overflow of your intimacy and relationship with him. And model that. Remind people that you're not their Savior, you're their pastor. And that pastor wants to be able to say to them, imitate me as I imitate Jesus Christ. And Jesus himself wasn't on 24/7.
Yeah.
The Father was.
There we go.
So trust your Father, walk like Jesus, and love in his name.
I like that. All right, John, Todd, thank you so much. If you guys are looking for any resources that we mentioned during this show, those can be found in the show notes, which can be found at watermarkresources.com/CLP Live. If you have any other questions or comments or ways that we can serve you in your church during this season, the best way to contact us is via email. We can be reached at clp@watermark.org. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.